So today I am making a disappearing 9-patch quilt for my sister-in-law for her wedding. She has a California king bed, so I didn't want to have a lot of small pieces, and so I decided I would go ahead and use these 10-inch blocks, layer cake. I got this layer cake. It is something that I think both her and her husband can live with. She was looking for something blues, and I decided that I would do this disappearing 9-patch because I could make a huge block and take up a lot of space. So by the time the block gets done, I believe it will measure about 26 inches. So that's pretty big. I'm having difficulty with the measurements and coming out just right for the California King, because California King measurement for a quilt is 110 by 120 inches, and I have 26. I can do 4 blocks across and 5 down. That makes it only 104 by 130 inches. So I did buy fabric to do a little bit of a border to try to enlarge the width, but I don't necessarily want to make the length any longer. So I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to do. I do have several of the blocks left over, so maybe I will do like piano border just down the sides to increase it a little bit, or like charm squares maybe down the side. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing with it as we go. So what I did was I took all of my blocks, I laid everything out, 5 print and 4 solids per block. I laid everything out. I didn't want to have a lot of repeats, the same patterns in each block. So I went ahead and laid everything out, pinned them all together. I have 20, I ended up with 21 blocks. So in case I have a mistake, I have an extra one, and one that maybe I don't like as well, I can pull that out. So right now I'm just sewing them together, and I'm gonna chain piece a little bit, just getting the rows together, and then I will show you how I go ahead and cut this 9-patch up into make a disappearing 9-patch. Okay, so now I have chain pieced and pieced together each row, and I laid it out the way I wanted it, and now I am going to pin them together. And the most important thing, of course, is you want to try to line up your seams here and here. The best way to do that is to be able to nest your seams. So you want your pressed edges to go in opposite directions. So this one is going to the right, I'm gonna take this one to the left, and then I'm gonna kind of butt them up together. A lot of people say that they can feel what it feels like. You can kind of feel them nesting. I must have numb fingers because I sure don't feel it. I just pin right through there, and then I'll pin these together. And let me go ahead and try to get this one nested up here, and there we go. And then I'll put some more pins along here and make sure that, you know, because as much as these are all supposed to be 10-inch blocks, 10-inch squares, and you want to have the perfect seams, in reality, you can try to do your 1/4-inch seam or a scant 1/4 inch or a little bit over. Things always happen, and you have to kind of play with it. You don't always have a 1/4-inch seam. You don't, as long as you're consistent, that's all that matters. And then make sure that everything kind of lines up. What you can do is, you know, you can kind of force feed it, stretch it a little bit, and when you're sewing, and kind of make it go that way. And then I'll pin some more here, but then I'm gonna flip this over, and then this goes down like this. And I, of course, have ironed this in the wrong direction, so I'm gonna take this back to the ironing board. I'm gonna iron all of these to the left so that when I go to nest and go to sew, it'll sew up a little bit easier. I try to look at that when I'm in there ironing and make sure that I'm going in the right direction. I kind of lay it out in there. I'm about 50-50. 50% of the time I get it right, 50% I don't, but you know, it's really simple just to go back and iron it the other direction. And I'm gonna do that and then sew these together, and I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've got the block all sewn together, and it turned out okay. I would say 3 out of my 4 points here are right on. I'll show you this one if you can see that one. That one turned out pretty good, right on the mark there. That looks pretty good. The one that is off just a titch would be this one. You can see it's off just a little bit to the side. So, you know, finished is better than perfect. So I believe that once we get this together and we get it quilted, I'm not gonna know that that's there. So it's gonna work out just fine. I'm not worried at all. So now what I do then is I lay this all out. I have my 6.5 inch ruler. So in order to cut this, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this down here, cut it here, and then we're gonna make this 9 patch disappear. So in order to do that, obviously this is a large piece of fabric to work with. So I'm using my seam line here to measure 4 3/4 inches over, and then I'm gonna cut along this. So I'm lining up my 4 3/4. I'm gonna make sure it marks here, it marks here 4 3/4, and then it also marks here 4 3/4. Now, I've learned the hard way, if you are just holding this down without one of these, you definitely should wear one of those gloves, because I've cut my fingers more than once. So those are very handy to have. I have them, but because I've got my hand up here out of the way, then I'm not gonna use it. And for some reason, this seems to be working better here. I can get more pressure with this little genie apparatus. So anyway, 4 3/4. I always check this 3 or 4 times to make sure that I am in the right spot. And then I'm gonna cut. And it did. I'm not gonna cut anymore because that kind of, I'm gonna pull this down so that I can get it up there. And then it did swivel just a little bit. I didn't have enough pressure. So it swiveled a little bit at the end. So I am going to line this up, and I'm trying to get it clear down here in this first row of blocks so that if my seam's off a little bit, it's still equivalent down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna start there and got a little thread there. Okay, here we go. There we go. Set that aside and got it. So then I'm gonna set this aside. I'll move this out of the way, flip this around, and then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna measure 4 3/4 here. 4 3/4, 4 3/4. Obviously, when you're working with a smaller piece of fabric, it's much easier to do this. But you know, I don't have a lot of patience, unfortunately, and so I tend to like working with bigger things, so that I don't know, it's a learning curve, I think, for me. 4 3/4. Okay, so now here's the part that I am trying to make sure that all of them turn out the same. So here we go. I'm going to line it back up like it was before I cut it. And then okay, so it's lined up just like I did before I cut it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn each square to the left a 1/4 turn. So then if I do this consistently, then each block is turning out the same. So then I have my little like pinwheel here in the middle of my gray. So then when I go to match the blocks together, then I'm gonna have this gray negative space here in the middle. So the other thing that I did move this zigzag to the middle. I wasn't sure how this would sew together. I was worried about, you know, the lines, if it would look okay, and it looks pretty good, so I'm glad that I moved it. I am concerned about putting the check, the plaid here in the middle and then cutting that, because what if it doesn't line up and then I don't cut straight down a line? I think that would bother me, so I probably will never put a plaid in the middle to be cut. Although I love that fabric, I'm gonna just leave it out here to the side and have it as a large square, because I don't want to cut it and have an offset plaid. That would really bother me. So anyway, so now I'm going to pin this together and sew these together, and then again when I go to sew this together, I'll want this point here to match up in the middle, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. All right, now I've got everything sewn together and I've got it pressed. So now it is a disappearing 9 patch. Let's see if you can kind of see a little bit better. There you go. So I also have a few blocks up on my design wall, and let me take this out of here. And hi, where's my thing? All right, let's see if I can flip this around. Hold on. Why, oh why? All right, now I've got everything sewn together and I've got it pressed. So now it is a disappearing 9 patch. Let's see if you can kind of see a little bit better. There you go. So I also have a few blocks up on my design wall, and let me take this out of here. And hi, where's my thing? All right, let's see if I can flip this around. Hold on. Why, oh why? Okay, I got it flipped around. So here's my design wall. I have 2 blocks up, and of course my light bar goes across my long arm, and so let me try to move that out of the way. There we go. So here I have 2 blocks up, and see how it's going to go together? It's going to have quite a pattern going. I really like it. I wasn't sure that I would, but I think it will look very nicely. And then there's our toucan. Here we go. So I only have about 17 more to go, so I will get sewing. Hopefully I will be able to get the blocks completed today. Thanks.